Hello, my name is Brein Lopez. I am the manager of Children's Book World in Los Angeles, where we make it our mission that every child sees themselves and each other reflected on our bookshelves. There is nothing more satisfying and powerful than creating allyship by the sharing of books, stories, histories, and ideas that represent an entire community and its cultures. And boy, do we have a great lineup of authors to be able to help us with that today. I'm so excited to have Christina Soontornvat, Supriya Kelkar, and Joanna Ho here to be able to talk about their books. How are you all?
Great.
It's so good. So happy to be here.
And you're all friends too, which just makes it even nicer to have you here because you're a friend group as well.
Yes, friends and fans.
Yeah, that part. Big fan.
Children's Book World and our partner TeachAAPI are proud to present this vital and celebratory author talk to commemorate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It is called Light and Legacy, Asian American Nonfiction to Inspire Every Reader, a conversation with acclaimed authors Joanna Ho, Supriya Kelkar, and Christina Soontornvat about the importance of writing nonfiction stories for young people about Asian American history and culture that educates and inspires readers. Our partners, TeachAAPI, have a mission like ours of community building. Through events in person, virtually, and by sharing resources, they create a space where children, parents, and people who identify with an AAPI culture can find a sense of belonging, confidence, and pride in themselves, and a better understanding of people who may look like them or share a similar background. They believe that this sense of belonging and understanding are critical tools to building self-advocacy skills in life. And boy, they have got people all over the country now who have become part of that vast community online, as well as within their individual communities, and they just do amazing, amazing work, and we're so proud to be partners with them. So our authors are here. Christina Soontornvat is a 3-time Newbery honoree, a Sibert honoree, and a Kirkus Prize winner. Her highly acclaimed backlist includes the middle grade graphic novel, The Tryout, and its sequel, which is coming up very, very soon. Narrative novels, The Last Mapmaker and A Wish in the Dark. Her award-winning nonfiction book, All 13, The Incredible Cave Rescue of the Third Thai Boys Soccer Team. The picture book, To Change a Planet. The emerging chapter book series, Diary of an Ice Princess and Legends of Lotus Island. When do you have time to do anything else? And her newest book, Made in Asian America, A History for Young People, is co-written with author, advocate, and historian Erika Lee, whose book, The Making of Asian America, won multiple awards. How are you, Christina?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
This new book, are you excited about it?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. My co-author, Erica, she's written so many books and she writes books for adults. And I had read her book, The Making of Asian America, as an adult. And I think, Joanna, you had read her book too, right?
I did.
And just was like so blown away, just as a reader, just how much I was learning, how much history I didn't know. And then about a year after I finished her book, got a call to ask if I wanted to work with her on a book for young readers, on a book for middle grade readers, covering the same thing, Asian American history. So it's just like this crazy thing where you're a huge fan of someone and then you get asked to work with them. I really can't believe I've gotten to work with her on this.
That's amazing. That's so great. And she is such a great writer, and having the two of you together to be able to speak on so many wonderful topics. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but it is a wonderful book. Supriya Kelkar is an award-winning author, illustrator, and screenwriter who grew up in the Midwest, where she learned Hindi as a child by watching 3 Hindi movies a week. That sounds like the best school ever.
It was.
Supriya's books include international bestseller Ahimsa, The Many Colors of Harpreet Singh, American as Paneer Pie, my favorite, a school library journal best book of 2020, Strong as Fire, Fierce as Flame, a Jane Addams Children's Book Award honor book, Bindu's Bindis, Brown is Beautiful, My Name, and The Cobra Song, which is your YA, and it's in the middle grade, but it just came out in paperback. It comes out in paperback tomorrow.
Yes.
Which is exciting. She is also the illustrator of Jyoti Rajan Gopal's American Daisy and Rakhi Mirchandani's My Diwali Light, and the author-illustrator of her newest book, published by Candlewick, And Yet You Shine, The Kohinoor Diamond, Colonization and Resistance. author and illustrator for the same book. That's a debut. How do you feel about that?
I was so nervous, but also so happy because I've illustrated for friends and other authors before, but never my own stuff. So I didn't have that immense pressure of, am I going to ruin someone's book? I was just all the internal stuff instead. So yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah. Once that door opens, it never closes. I've been
Yeah.
doing this for 35 years and worked with so many authors and illustrators. And when that door opens to where you start doing your own books, yeah, that's like a really wonderful thing for an artist as well as an author. And very few people can do it. So I just want you to, do it well. Do it well,
Thank
I
you.
should say. So it's an
Very
amazing
kind of you
achievement.
to say.
Joanna Ho is passionate about equity in books and education. She is the New York Times best-selling and award-winning author of many books for young readers, including the picture books Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, Eyes That Speak to the Stars, Eyes That Weave the World's Wonders, Say My Name, and On the Tip of a Wave, How Ai Weiwei's Art is Changing the Tide. The Silence That Binds Us was written for teens. She's received the Asian Pacific American Award for Children's Literature Honor, a Golden Kite Award, Ezra Jack Keats Award, a Golden Poppy Award, some of these great California awards because she's a great California writer also. Her newest book from Orchard Books, an imprint of Scholastic, is We Who Produce Pearls, an anthem for Asian America, illustrated by Amanda Punbidi Pakaya, or Pakya, I'm sorry, Punbidi Pakya. I want to make sure I got her name correct. Whose artwork is stunning. I mean, you talk about that with Erika Lee, Christina, but Joanna, when you found out that this was going to be the artist for your book, how did you feel about that? Because her art is so famous in New York City because she did all these amazing billboards, right?
No, it's like such a dream that I've gotten to work with her. So initially the idea for the book, when my editor actually sort of planted the seed in my head and was like, and I think it would be amazing if Amanda illustrated it. So what happened was Amanda happened to be in Oakland. And so I sort of stalked her through the prompting of my editor, and we had lunch and we like talked through this idea. And she was like very wisely like, well, that sounds like a great idea. Let me see the manuscript before I say anything. And I just feel so fortunate that after reading the manuscript, she agreed to take on the project, because really, as you were saying, her art is just gorgeous. So
there's something also about, as we go into seeing it in just a minute, she's such a community artist. Like, she does immersion projects where it's vital. It's like living within the actual community itself, for everyone to be able to share in that experience of it emotionally, however you're feeling. And so having it go along with your verse, which is so impactful and powerful, like it was just like it was like a really perfect melding. So I just think it's just so exciting. All of these books are so incredible. Now I'm going to share my screen real quick, and so we can see the images. Let's see, there we go. And let me just do this real quick. Okay, and so this is our, let's see, I'm going to go back one. There we go. This is the cover for Made in Asian America, with a history for young people. I love the spectrum of people, kids that are down there on the bottom middle of the illustration. And Supriya, here is the cover of your book. Just so beautiful. Well, tell us about, I love all of the intricate design on the background as well. How did you decide that this is what you wanted for the cover illustration?
So strangely, the cover took probably the longest out of any piece of art in this book, because the art director, me, the editor, my agent, we were all thinking, and we just couldn't figure out what this cover should look like, because if you just put the diamond, that's hard for readers to connect to. So I have these two children who are used throughout the book. They change through time, through history, and they represent different cultures and religions in the story. So I did a lot of homages to traditional South Asian art, to the folk art that survived colonization. the British East India Company used to tax people just for existing, and then take a portion of the revenue of that tax money to purchase these goods that South Asian artists and artisans were known for around the world, and then take those out and sell them. So it was this really huge scam that led to the death of millions and millions of South Asians and Indians. And so I wanted to pay homage to that. So throughout the book, anytime you see animals or the ocean, those are all made out of fabrics of South Asia and traditional folk art. So when I was thinking about that, that's sort of the moment where I realized that the cover should have that as a way to tell the story, because Candlewick really wanted the history shown on the cover. So that's when I decided to do sort of a mainly like a henna design in the background. So we see that diamond being taken from the boy prince, and anytime there's a colonizer's hand, there are thorns instead of flowers blooming, but we still see all these buds and blooms, and that show the resistance and the survival of people.
I love the
Gosh,
shine.
that's so cool.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
And the shine of the diamonds, I mean, that is like that. It comes across in every little spot where it's there as well, which I think is it's a great cover. And here we have the cover, Amanda's cover of We Who Produce Pearls, which is just stunning. Were there other cover options, Joanna?
There's actually such a fascinating cover story. It really was sort of a battle because Amanda has never done children's books before. So I think this was a really new experience for her, and having to work with a lot of people who had opinions about her art, like it could influence what it was supposed to look like. So I think for a long time, actually, the team was pushing for one child or one or two children on the cover only. And it just felt so important that we would have multiple, because our community is so diverse. You can't just have, like, I mean, even three doesn't capture everything. So Amanda actually commissioned, she like spent her own money and did this like whole survey research situation where she like had multiple cover options and like did a poll of all these random people, and then brought the numbers back to Scholastic to say like, hey, this cover with multiple kids, or this cover with this design, etc., to sort of try to sway the team towards a cover that ended up being this one.
And it's a great one. It's almost like a map of the Asian experience as well, if you look at it in its own particular way. But then there's just so much movement and positivity in the expressions, and the use of color, of course. It is really stunning. I can imagine it on the bookshelves too when people see it. Christina, I would love for you to talk to us about Made in Asian America, history for young people, and how this came about.
Yeah. Yeah, so with this book, as I said, Erika had written an adult history called The Making of Asian America. And it was so comprehensive. I mean, it covers over 400 years of history because,
Yep.
so for example, one of the many things that I didn't know about Asian American history, because I was not taught it growing up when I was going to school, is how long Asians have been impacting our country and contributing to the country. So we're starting before the United States is even a nation. And so we had a lot of conversations about how we wanted to make it different, because the book is going to be specifically for kids. And so we're very on board that, like, okay, this is not going to be just a list of, dates and a lot of events and names to memorize, because I mean, that's hard for anybody, not just kids, to remember, right? So we decided that every chapter, we're going to be, focusing on a different portion of history. We're going to go in order, in time, but we're really going to try to choose one person and tell history through their own story. So in every chapter, you've got one featured narrative, one story of a real Asian American. And wherever we could, we said we want it to be a real young Asian Americans. So a lot of the times we're telling stories of teenagers or kids who live through this part in history. And sometimes they go on to do really incredible things. Like we tell the story of Tyrus Wong, who came to the United States as a young boy, and he came through the Angel Island Immigration Center and had this really harrowing experience there. He went on to become a very famous Disney animator, but of course, at the time, didn't know what his future would hold. And other times we're talking about people that, usually are not covered in history books at all. Just ordinary Americans who are doing these incredible things. And one of the coolest things, something that I love that Erika was really passionate about, is opening the book and closing the book with kids who are living today and making a difference today. So we're talking especially about these kids who they had the same experience as me. They didn't learn Asian American history in school, and they wanted to change that. So they went to their state legislatures and said, let's make Asian American history a part of the curriculum, and we're able to get that changed. So it's just been so great to open with them and close with them, because we're making history every day. I think we don't think about that. We think about history in the past, but history is happening right now all the time.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting book, and I love that there's all these photographs throughout. There's graph charts to be able to support that. There are so many kids who love nonfiction. There's nothing like my least favorite part of being a bookseller is when I have a parent come in with two kids and say to me, this child is a reader because they read fiction, and this child is not. They don't, because they don't read fiction. And as a matter of fact, that child who's a nonfiction reader is probably the stronger reader in the actual spectrum of things, because they are able to gather so much information from what they're actually reading. They remember it, they contextualize it, and they have a better idea of the world in which they live. I just think it's such powerful knowledge inside nonfiction that when you create it for kids, is that a special because you've done your biggest success for your books was with a nonfiction title. Are the kids who come to you responding to your nonfiction books a little different from the kids who come and respond to your fiction work?
Yeah, it's funny because I never was planning to be a nonfiction writer. Like I just was like, I love fantasy, and that's what I started out as a fantasy writer. I was like, that's what that's who I am, that's what I do. And the nonfiction book about the Thai cave rescue, it so happened that, it happened in Thailand while my family was there. And so I felt very passionate about it. It just felt like this thing that I had to write about, but I had no idea what I was doing. And so, had to teach myself a lot about writing nonfiction. And the thing that I really discovered is it's really not that different. You're telling a story, you're looking for a way to get your reader to just get hooked and engrossed in this story. And that's, whether you're making up the characters or whether the characters are real people, you just have to find that in for the reader. So yeah, sometimes I get, I get people who say, "Oh, I don't ever read nonfiction, but I liked this book." Or I get kids who are like, I don't usually pick up, fantasy novels, but because I read your nonfiction, I started reading this. So it's just, we're trying to get to them in all different ways, trying to get these readers on board.
Yeah, you certainly did it with this book. I love that it's actually very accessible to everybody of all different reading ages. So even if they were younger grades, like let's just say starting third or fourth, they'd still have access into the stories that are being told about real people's lives. And I can see a lot of Googling happening as they're reading this book to go see, like, I need to see images of these different people, right? Like there's a lot of, when you have to, like, you're reading a book and you have to stop because then you have to go and look and see what else was going on, or if there's, other video footage of it and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I hope it's so. I'm sure that Joanna and Supriya are gonna say the same thing, and especially with their books, because the way that they did it was, I think, so great, of like writing spare text and then having more information to follow up on, because it's so impossible to tell these stories in you know, even if we had 1,000 pages, we couldn't cover it. So I think
That's
we're
right.
just really trying to, you know, shine a light on some of these stories, and then hopefully, yeah, you get so invested that you go down that rabbit hole and you're hooked and you want to learn more.
Yeah. There we are back again, Spirit, to that wonderful cover. Your artwork, I'm a big person for collage and textural artwork. And then that is so engaging, but then we get into the power of your words throughout the story, the verse that you use, but then also the incredible back pages with information as well, which are so powerful. I love that it is an unflinching account, even though it is beautiful and gorgeous. It's also an unflinching account of the effects of colonialism on generational culture. Can you talk to us about your book?
Yeah, so And Yet You Shine, the Kohinoor Diamond Colonization and Resistance is, of course, about the Kohinoor Diamond. So this was one of the world's most famous diamonds, and for centuries, all the diamonds in the world, other than some black diamonds found in Borneo, came from ancient India, from South Asia. And the Kohinoor was wanted by many people because it was this massive diamond. And it changed hands several times across South Asia. It went to other parts of Western Asia and eventually returned to South Asia in the hands of a 5-year-old boy king who got the diamond after his father passed away, the king. And he wore it as a little armlet, and he was living his life, but there was a problem, and that was that the British East India Company, a company of colonizers who had colonized large parts of India and South Asia, wanted that diamond because it stood for power. So they separated the boy king from his mother, and they imprisoned her. And they eventually forced him to sign the diamond and his massive kingdom over to the British East India Company. And they took this boy when he was 10 years old to England along with the diamond, and he was kept as a prized ward of the British. He was not allowed to see his mother again for years and years and years until he was an adult. And the diamond was put on display at the Great Exhibition, but there was another problem. It didn't shine enough for the beauty standards in England. So Prince Albert had it cut down to nearly half its size, so almost half that diamond was chopped away at to be reshaped to the beauty standards in Europe. And Queen Victoria wore it as a pin, and it later became a part of the crown jewels. So Queen Elizabeth's mother wore it. There are famous images of that purple crown on her coffin when she died. And Camilla was expected to wear it at the coronation, but there was this huge international outcry over the stolen treasures looted during colonization. So she wore a different crown, also full of stolen diamonds. And to this day, the Kohinoor diamond is a part of the crown jewels, locked up in the Tower of London Museum. And it's there for the royal family to wear whenever they want. So when I was thinking about this diamond, I realized its story was also the story of a people and the story of anyone affected by colonization, and more broadly, anyone who's ever felt less than. And it was a way to remind us all to never forget our shine. So that's why I really wanted to tell it. I think it's one of the most important books of my career. And I mean, I was honored to tell the story. I felt a lot of the weight of the story because this is from living history. My dad was born in British occupied India. You know, we see the repercussions of colonization every single day. We feel it every single day.
It is just such a powerful story. Tell me about all the information in the back pages and how you decided what went in there and why it was so important to have all of that.
Yeah, so because the story is told in second person and it tells the history, but it doesn't go into all the detail, like Christina said, that back matter was really important. And Joanna's book also does this amazing job with that back matter and telling more of the story there. So we wanted to include the history there. We also wanted to give some facts, like I always get asked how big this diamond is, and I can never remember. So it's a good thing it's in the back of this book. And then we wanted to explain what colonization was in a kid-friendly way, and give some actionable ways to decolonize, like saying your name the way it's meant to be said, and saying your friends' names the way that's meant to be said, and respecting all different forms of beauty around the world. So we wanted to give some actionable items and some links so that kids with their grownups can learn more. And we also wanted to pose the question, what should happen to this Kohinoor diamond and to all the looted artifacts in museums, and make kids really think when they go to museums, where did this come from? Why is this in someone's possession? Why does it say someone with a non-Indian name donated this artifact? How did they get it? So we really wanted to make people think, and not just about South Asian artifacts, but just anything in a museum. How was it procured? Was it through ethical means? And so I really love that we have space for all of that in the back matter.
Yeah, they're important topics because they're happening in the news every single day. We obviously, there's all over the world, there's art that is looking to be returned or has been returned to different cultures. We have a situation here in the United States where there are countless museums that have indigenous art exhibits that are actually from, sacred pieces of art that should never have been presented in that way or scale. So there's so many things that are being dealt with. So it is such a timely thing. But again, I love that the actual thread of the picture book itself is so positive in the idea of, yes, as you said, like talking about the diamond, but also using it as a metaphor for the people itself who have also been taken and stolen and reshaped and cut down and done whatever they could, but they still shine through it all. It's a really powerful, powerful picture book.
It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
First time I read it, I was like, Supriya is a genius. This is.
I kept flipping through like, and she did the art too. Like, who is this lady?
Yeah.
You're both.
There's so many ways you could have told this story, but I just think the way you did it is so perfect. It's so
Thank
powerful.
you.
Yeah.
And I have to say, so I have both of these books, of course. Is this the right way? No. Sorry. So when I read both of these, I broke down crying because I think we have experienced this erasure of our histories, and just tying that into what you said about telling the story in a positive way at the end and reminding us all that we shine. I think we all did that in our stories, and we've shown the hard parts of our histories, but we've also shown how we're all connected and how resilient we are and our resistance, and we've celebrated that. And I think it is so special for kids today to have these books.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could just call you each gold, diamond, and pearl because in Christina, in your book, as you mentioned before about the history of the Asian American experience, it does start from the beginning, and it does start so early on with bringing people over for gold mining and the gold rush, and during that time period, even before that, but even there. And then when being done with that community, the horrifying things that they did with the Chinese Exclusionary Act and other. And then you have the diamond, obviously, again, and then we have the pearls with this beautiful book, Joanna. I mean, hello. I mean, look at this. Look at this incredible art. But I have to say, the art is gorgeous. But boy, your verse. Whew, I mean, like I want an audio version of it. I just was like, it was so powerful. How long was the process of writing this?
Okay, well, one thing I would say is just I love how connected all of our books are. So I'll start with talking about The Making of Asian America by Dr. Lee, the book that Christina wrote with her and Made in Asian America. I used that book to research this book tremendous. So I read it once around the same time I think Christina read it. There was a bunch of authors who did it together, and I did it delayed, but I was inspired by them. Yeah, and then when I started working on this book, I went back to that book and I listened to it on audio, and I just took notes while I was listening. So I have like a bajillion pages of notes from that book. So I'm just obsessed and so thrilled that Christina has written Made in Asian America for young readers, because again, the history, I just feel like for all of us, it feels so important that young people today learn the histories that we had never had the opportunity to learn, because it helps us understand how connected we are, like the shoulders we stand on. Like with that erasure, it feels like a real loss of identity even if we've come over as immigrants or as children of immigrants. So that's sorry, that doesn't totally answer your story, but I feel like I had to say that part. I'm just grateful for all the work that has been done by folks in our community that has made the books that we are talking about today possible. So I researched for over a year, and I think there were several things that stood out to me in that research process. One was just how connected, again, how our communities are. Like the Asian American community is so diverse, it's so complex, but there are so many ways that our stories are parallel from stories like what Supriya's book talks about, like the history of colonization and imperialism and the ways that our ancestral homelands have been used and pillaged, which drove people to come to the United States and to the Americas, to the ways that the narrative has been used against us, or ways that our communities have been used in this nation. So I wanted to show those ideas of parallel, like the shared parts of our experience, to help us hopefully be able to come together in greater solidarity. And then I also, for me, something that really stood out is just that as Asians in America, we've always risen up and spoken out and fought against injustice, which is just not the stereotype or the narrative that is dominant about Asian people. Like, we are told we're submissive and we're silent and we're quiet, and it's just factually not true when you know the history. And so I wanted, hopefully, for us to be able to draw upon that history and to be able to like really work in all of our power and possibility today as a community that's more unified with each other, but also across other marginalized communities as well.
It is so great. I just love it. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here, and we are back. And 1 second, let's do that. 1 second. There we go. Oh my gosh, that was so incredible looking at all of that artwork, and then hearing your stories about creating all of that. And it is so interesting, because I think that a lot of these nonfiction stories are also being now told within, they've always been, but even more so, they're being told within fictional narratives as well. And I'm going to think of two kids' book legends, we'll call them, Grace Lin and Lisa Yee, who have been doing this for a long time, right? Doing that hard work, but seeing Lisa with Maisie Chen's Last Chance, which had a lot of this history as well, finally getting like the honors that she deserves on a national scale. So it's great that you guys honor the authors who've come before you as well, because that lay the groundwork for what's new and exciting. And you continue to do that because there's new authors that are following you in that pathway as well. When you go around doing tours, do you find kids who inspire you when they come and talk to you about your book?
Yeah, and Joanna, you just got off of a tour. Did you? How?
Yeah, I just feel like the young people are so, I mean, they're so much smarter than we were. They're so much more aware and more conscious. I would say just a couple thoughts on tour. One is that when we organize like panels of authors or activists or educators, community organizers from such diverse parts of the Asian American community, just to talk in conversation, much like what we're doing now. And it felt so powerful to have a shared space with other members in community to talk about our community. It just feels like that's an opportunity we don't have enough. And then as far as young people, I'll just tell you one story. At one of the events, at the Q&A, there was this, she must have been 5, but she sort of raised her hand and she was like, does anyone in the room have a pearl in their mouth right now? And we were all like, oh, there's like 8 million ways to answer that question, but the ways that people are thinking and the ways that they push me, I think, and all of us to think deeper and to love harder and to be more compassionate is just, I think, I feel like often inadequate, very grateful, but also very inadequate to be able to do the work that we get to do, because they're so brilliant. The young people we get to write for are so brilliant.
Yeah, they really are. And they're so, I feel like there's some reluctance by adults
Yeah.
often to talk about like hard truths in life in general, but especially when it comes to history, like not wanting to confront some of the ugly parts of America's past, because they think like, oh, that kids won't be able to handle that, or that, no, that that's just going to bring up hard things to talk about. But I have just been so impressed with the kids who are just so eager to talk about that. And that's like what they gravitate toward. They love to hear about, like the real story. Like, oh, this is what, like I'm thinking of kids in one of my school visit presentations who they wanted to tell me. I had a picture of the railroad when the Transcontinental Railroad was joined. And they wanted to tell me that they knew that Asians were left, that the Chinese workers were left out of that photo on purpose, this historical photo that celebrated when the railroad was completed. And they just, they want to dig into this stuff and have those more complicated, nuanced conversations, especially for middle grade. They're just like getting right at that point where they're like, the adults haven't told us the whole story. Like, this is what is really going on. So that's just been so inspiring to see.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I previewed this book to my son's class. So this was before it published. And well, first of all, when I asked what should happen to the diamond and to other looted artifacts, the class of 30 kids busted out this "give it back" chant and went on for a really long time. And I was like, I think we need to, lower the volume here. We're gonna get in trouble. But at the end of it, a girl who was not Asian American, a white girl, came up to me. Well, she raised her hand and she said, I feel like this story is just like how people don't want us to know that the founding fathers of this country enslaved people. And the repetitive theme here is I cry a lot, but I got really like teary because she was able to take this story that, at its basic form is not her story. It's the Kohinoor Diamond is not her story, but it is our story. This is our story. And she was able to connect it to something that happened in this country. And it's just this way of seeing how kids today can connect all these stories and know it's so important to be inclusive and hear all these stories and tell these stories and bring things that were kept out of the light into it. And I think that's just so inspirational for all of us.
One thing I would just jump in and add to that I really notice in school visits is just that young people, I feel like they're so close to the idea of justice. Like it feels very clear to them when they learn history, what's right, what's wrong. They can wade into the nuance, but they lean so strongly into compassion and to like liberatory ideas. And so when people, like Christina was referencing, feel hesitant to be open about all the messiness of the history that we are all, part of, it feels like it does a real disservice because they gravitate, like Christine was saying, they gravitate towards these ideas and they lean so hard into them, and things seem to make a lot of sense to them that are not clear to adults.
Right.
Like it feels like, and I feel like that's also inspirational. I feel like it's a continued motivation to keep writing the types of things we all want to be writing, because young people, it's not that they eat it up, but I feel like they're so connected to those ideas of, like, I don't want to say good and evil because that's not what I mean, but just, like treating each other as humans, all people as humans.
Yeah.
Well, that's the power of these books. I mean, the one is that you're opening a door that allows them to be able to use their voices, to combine it with their own artistic experience and talent, and to be able to feel confident in being able to speak about social justice in a way that can also feel positive and not necessarily dark and negative. And so I think that's a really great thing. And I also think, as we have talked about recently, Supriya, that the reason why all of these books are being banned around the country, or have been over the last couple of years in a larger amount, is because of that exactly. That they create what I call I use the active word of caring. They actually create caring for other people, caring for other human beings, and understanding of other human beings and cultures, and sharing that culture too, not just not just caring about its existence, but also sharing in the culture as well, and experiencing it. And so that's a scary thing for a lot of people, because that is not what they want, right? They don't want that to actually take place. What they want is to keep everybody compartmentalized so they can continue to keep that colonization and keep that, you know, separation and prejudice and segregation going. So you're all, I say it again and again, but you're all on the front lines doing some incredible work to keep these out in the, you know, we get book orders from all over the country, and so frequently they come from places like South Dakota, West Virginia, places where they may not have access. There are great indie bookstores out there, but they may not even realize that they have access locally, so they seek out lists that we'll put out there. And it's always such a great feeling to know that we're able to reach those communities. And you know, the power of this video itself will be that, because people will be able to see it online on YouTube and get inspired by all of it.
Yeah, that's so great. I feel like when I was in school, I have lived in Texas all my life, and I grew up in a small town in Texas, and was one of the only Asian American kids in my school. And because, we didn't have a bookstore in our town, and there were not as many diverse books at that time, my library had a very limited selection, a very mostly white, mostly male selection of books. I felt very alone. And it's so, one thing that's so incredible is growing up and meeting, like I've talked to Supriya so many times of, how if I had had like American as paneer pie, even though I'm not South Asian, and Supriya grew up in a completely different part of the country than me, like I would have just been like, oh, that's my story, that's my book. So I think it's so that's like just such the power of books, is that they connect us. And thank goodness, we have things like this Zoom, and your bookstore, passionate booksellers, educators who are doing this work of making sure nobody feels alone.
Yeah. And each of your own individual places that you come from or where you're living have had their own stories within. Like, I think a lot of the stories are in your book, Christina, but I think about Supriya, you were raised in Michigan, right? So I mean, like the whole, Asian American rights movement began in some ways with Vincent Chin. I mean, no, it actually existed long before that, but I think of it in terms of the 60s, we're taking our power back.
Yeah.
Began with the experience of the Vincent Chin murder in Detroit. And so there's the power of that. Christina, in Texas, you guys it's being faced again right now with them trying to pass bills that are outlawing the ability of people who are Chinese to be able to purchase property or purchase land. And they're not the only state to be doing that, but that's certainly one of the states that is creating that. It doesn't change, does it? I mean, like you think it's there's always this, the fight never ends.
I think
Well,
that's
and I
why.
think that's, oh, go ahead. Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, just I think that's why I mean, I would just say all of our books, as hopefully, as was said earlier, like shining a light on the history, because when there's, like, as you were saying earlier, like there's a really intentional reason why books are banned, why these stories are trying to be outlawed and all across the country, because when we understand and know the history, we can start to recognize the patterns, recognize the narratives, and then not be susceptible to falling victim or to believing them and internalizing them the way I think so many of us did as kids. I grew up in Minnesota and also in the Midwest. And so similarly, I feel like that's why it's so important for us to uncover and to shine lights on on all of these histories, because it's like you were saying, the playbook is the same. What we see happening now, when you know the history, you're like, oh, this is exactly what they did X number of years ago and the next number of years before that, because this works unless we stand up and we fight back.
100%.
It's what I love about them all is also, as I'm reading all three of them, is I felt that, and I'm a mixed person, a mixed cultural person of diversity that way. But I felt like if you were from a marginalized community, from the global majority, but a marginalized community in this particular country, that you could come to these books and completely understand and have a feel for everything that was happening, that see yourself represented in that, even if the language wasn't necessarily directed towards you specifically, but it is in the general feeling of the book. Why is allyship within all of these marginalized communities so incredibly important?
Man, I mean, I feel like this is something, you talk about history that we didn't know. I had no idea of the many times Asian Americans have stood in allyship with people of other races, and that's really how we got gains. I mean, that's how we persevered, was by doing that. And it's just exactly for the reasons that, you were saying, that there is a playbook, there is a very intentional reason why different groups are kept from knowing about each other, from standing in solidarity with each other, because when we do, we rise up and we challenge that power structure. So like, one of the many stories I never knew was how Filipino American laborers, farm workers, allied with Mexican American farm workers in the 60s to fight back against these really oppressive systems for agricultural workers. And they won big, and they showed the world that this is what happens when you can't, pit people of different races against each other, because they're going to join and they're going to push back. So I mean, it's important because it's essential, and that's really how we move forward as a group, as for everyone.
Like what she said.
I know. I said it all.
So as we come to the close of this wonderful talk, I want to ask you about what's on the horizon for you. Joanna, what do you have coming up next?
I have like a sort of silly holiday book out this fall. A nice to part. I feel like I poured like all of the pain and grief into this book, and then I was sort of like, okay, I need to write something that's just like very fluffy. So there's that. It's it's about a little girl who's looking for the real Santa, and it's kind of her and a single mom. So, and then next year I have a book called Becoming Boba. I'll sell it with Scholastic, which also initially started because I really wanted to just make a book with really cute boba pictures, but it ended up sort of being about what it means to be Asian enough, or in this case, milk tea enough. So that'll be out next summer.
I want to come to that launch party.
I know.
I know, right? It better be done right.
No pressure, no pressure.
Supriya, what's on the horizon for you?
So I have the Cobra song coming out in paperback tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in February, I have my next book that I got to write and illustrate, this time from Macmillan, called Thank You Teachers.
I saw the cover reveal. It looks so amazing.
Thank you. So that tells the parallel stories between what a child goes through and what teachers go through. And there's a little bit of a little shout out to curriculum control and banning books and all of that. So I'm really excited for that. And then it's a long ways out, but in 2026, my first graphic novel comes out, illustrated by Ani Bushri, called Off the Cuff, about growing up in 1991 in the small town of Michigan where I grew up, which has a Victorian festival where everyone in third grade has to dress up and cosplay racist. So it's about finding your voice and speaking up for what you believe in.
That's the tag
love
right
it.
there.
I love
cannot wait.
I can't wait.
Christina, you have a picture book that is a sort of nonfiction about voting, right? And you have your tell about what do you have coming up? You've got some great books coming up.
Yeah, so in September, I have a picture book. It's called Leo's First Vote. It's about a little boy whose dad just became a US citizen, and he's going to get to vote in the presidential election. So father and son are kind of learning about voting, about all the basics together. And really they're wondering, like, does one vote, does it even matter? Does it matter if you cast your vote? And of course, every vote matters. And what the book is about. And it's illustrated by Isabel Rojas, and she is, I love her. It's so cute. I can't wait to show you that book. And then, yes, in the fall, a sequel to the tryout is coming. It's called The Squad. And so it's more humiliating, cringeworthy middle school moments, heartbreak, some first crushes, lots of humor, all of the things.
Yeah, that is such a fun book. I will say, I tell people it's hard. There are some people still, adults I'm talking about, who come in with a prejudgment about graphic novels. And I try to get to them to understand one thing, which is that in some ways, graphic novels are doing the most important work because they are talking about the inner soul, the inner being of a kid, and all that they deal with in a classroom school setting, emotionally, mentally, and physically. They deal with bullying. They deal with so many things, subjects that are really not even captured. Some they're captured in narrative fiction as well, but they're really captured so beautifully in graphic novel. And they're really powerful tools. And the kids who read them are some of the best readers because they're able to contextualize things when they see art and text together.
Oh yeah, totally. And I cannot wait for yours, Supriya. Oh my
I
gosh.
know. I just keep thinking cosplaying racist. That's just stuck in my
My
head
town
now.
still does this, so I shouldn't say it so much out loud, but I do.
Maybe they won't after your book.
Yeah, right.
Well, in my dream world, I love collaborative fiction as well. Christina, I know that you did the collaborative series with our friend Sarah Milanowski, which was great. But I could see a dream team happening right here that could make a really great something together. So
I know when you said gold, diamond, and pearl, I was like, that sounds like a girl band. That's
Right?
like
I was
a
like,
cool.
secret agent.
I think it's there. I'm just putting it out there into the world. Manifestation is the most powerful tool. Just say it out loud and eventually it will come to pass somewhere. Thank you all so much for this wonderful conversation about your books. And I hope everyone enjoys this, but also goes out and either speaks up with their own voice, creates their own informational thing about the history, or just has a pearl in their mouth, as our little 5-year-old had, right? Any last final thoughts from any of you with your goodbyes?
Just
Oh my
thank you
God.
for hosting us and doing such amazing work where you are too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead. Thank you all. We'll see you again soon.